People are sleeping on bodyweight rolls. I don't get why, and by the end of this video, if I haven't convinced you to focus more on this criminally underrated exercise, then just feel free to drop a comment down below labeling how trash I am, because I wouldn't have done my job. Many of the questions I get on this channel about muscle ups, front levers, high pull-ups, fixing bad posture, even improving handstands can be remedied with this fantastic exercise. I think part of the reason why this movement gets discounted so aggressively is that it's seen as an exercise solely for calisthenics novices, an exercise that once we graduate from, we don't need to do anymore. Certainly anyone looking to learn to pull up is told to start here, and many just stop doing them once they have a few wobbly pull-ups under their belt, when actually it should be considered as a movement to master in its own right. I have a whole tutorial going through exactly how to make sure we're performing bodyweight rolls correctly, targeting all the muscles that we want to target as part of this movement. I will of course link that video down below. But once we've learned how to do the standard iteration of bodyweight rolls, I really don't think people appreciate why progressing bodyweight rolls can be so ridiculously valuable. To level up our pull-ups, we add weight, or we move on to muscle-ups. With overhead pressing, we have various skills and exercises that can keep us humble for a ridiculously long amount of time. But just like an exercise such as push-ups, we neglect bodyweight rolls to our own peril. And I really do mean this, because if we focus on the intent of the cues that we're going to be speaking about in this video, there is a world where rolls should be as hard, if not harder, than our pull-ups. When we roll, we're looking to work, amongst other muscles, the rear delts, the traps, and the rhomboids mainly. These are the muscles that add thickness to our back. But more than just aesthetics, they are the drivers of retraction at the scapula. So knowing this right off the bat, if we are not at least fully horizontal, we are already not maximizing our rolls, because this is where we'll get the biggest resistance from gravity acting on our own body weight. I mean, after all, it's labeled as a horizontal pulling exercise, not an incline pulling exercise. Many will find that doing this alone is humbling in and of itself, and of course the aim is to work towards being strong enough to do this eventually if we can't already, but there's still more that we can do even once it gets to this level. We can add weight. Of course, this is the progressive overload that we may have already experimented with for this movement, and adding weight makes sense once we're pulling with gravity acting in the right direction, namely downwards, and gives us an easy way to measure resistance, but we can still go further than this. Once we've mastered rolls in this pulling horizontally, we can work on pulling explosively. Training for speed, particularly during the concentric, has so many benefits in terms of building muscle and connective tissue development. Pausing at the top and slowing down the eccentric ensures that we're not just pulling like a crazy person without regard for form as well. With our advanced lifts such as high pull-ups and front lever work, our focus is all on downward rotation at the scapula. And with a slight tweak to our rolls, we have an exercise that can do this for us too. By focusing on maintaining a hollow body and pulling with an emphasis on downward rotation as opposed to retraction, we have an exercise that we can use to compound our efforts on our skill-based movements in a way that ensures that this strength transfers. Want to work on your front lever? We can see how this will develop the strength necessary to get our shoulders to that point where we can do things like front lever negatives. Working on our muscle-ups, hold that pause at the top of the row and visualize that transfer at the top of the muscle up where we typically move into the dip. What's great about this is that compared to more classic advanced pulling movements, rolls are far easier to get our head around and less taxing, so we can focus on things that we might not otherwise be able to. For example, with high pull-ups, the emphasis is naturally on pulling as high as we can. So much so that we may not be able to control the eccentric. With rolls, however, we can pull explosively, mimicking the same pulling path, but still control that descent. The thing to note as well is that when it comes to exercises that hold a lot of weight in the calisthenics world, such as a pull-up, we have key foundational requirements that make a pull-up, such as your chin needs to clear the bar as an example. If we gave our bodyweight rolls this level of respect and say, for example, mandated the chest making contact with the bar and dropping into scapular protraction at the bottom of every rep, I really think this will go a long way to making sure that such a valuable exercise is not neglected. The way I personally would structure progressing bodyweight rolls would be as follows. We've got the quote-unquote beginner row, the sort of row that we have in mind for the person that we all know needs to build a little bit of muscle in the back and is maybe working towards some sort of pull-up progression. It's accessible, less joint intensive than say a banded pull-up, and we can work at the sort of higher rep ranges to develop the hypertrophy and connective tissue conditioning that allows us to progress further. A step up from this is to aim to get fully horizontal, and just to be clear, the gap from going incline to horizontal should not be scoffed at. Full horizontal bodyweight rolls will humble most people. I certainly know that if I told you to put your body weight on a barbell and do a barbell roll like that, you'd at least raise an eyebrow. Once we're fully horizontal, we'll use our new form cues for this too. So chest to bar, ideally pulling explosively and lowering under control. For the majority of us, this alone will already be enough. But for those of us that want to level it up even further to work to, say, for example, a muscle up or a front lever, we'll swap out the focus on scapular retraction for a focus on downward scapular rotation, aiming to pull towards the belly button or waist if you can. Crowd, rather than doing what most of us do, in that we never look at an exercise again once it's become quote-unquote too easy, with bodyweight training we're only as limited in our ability to progressively overload as our imagination. And we can gain a lot by taking a movement as fundamental to our training as rows and doing our best to continually think of ways of making them more challenging. This, at least, is what I do in my own training, and if you want to take a look at any of the calisthenics skills that I've learned, then check this video out right here.